Hello, my name's Artis. At my mother's memorial dinner, I told my dad I couldn't breathe. Chest pain, real pain. And he looked me dead in the eye and said, "Shut up." In front of everyone. Then my sister laughed, turned it into a joke, and posted the clip online with circus music behind it. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was realizing that they'd been erasing me long before that dinner. Word by word, choice by choice. The will, the house, even my name. Why did it take collapsing in front of 30 guests for someone to finally believe I wasn't lying? And what else did they erase? While I was too busy proving I belonged. I didn't cry. That's the first thing I remember about that moment. I should have. Probably. It would have made sense, standing there in the middle of the dining room, every eye turning toward me like I'd just committed a felony by speaking. But no tears came. Just that strange, hollow feeling in my chest, the one you get when your body's trying to protect you from something your heart hasn't caught up with yet. The house smelled like baked ham and burnt garlic bread, the way it always did during big family dinners. It was warm, too warm, with the oven and stove running since morning, and the spring sun pushing against the windows like it had something to prove. My shirt stuck to the small of my back, and every breath I took felt thinner than the last. I was halfway through arranging the buffet table when the pressure in my chest grew sharper, like someone had wrapped a belt around my ribs and started pulling. I steadied myself against the counter, hoping it would pass, hoping I could keep pretending everything was fine. That was the routine. Feel it, hide it, move on. Zinnia strolled by, glass of wine in hand, wearing that smirk she reserved for family events, wide, polished, and fake as a plastic fork. She'd barely touched a single tray all day, but somehow she was already mingling, soaking up praise from guests who didn't know any better. A woman near the piano leaned in to compliment her. "Zin, this setup is gorgeous. Did you hire a caterer?" Zinnia laughed like it was a compliment she was too humble to accept. "Oh no," she said, waving a hand. "Just a little help from someone in the house." I froze, didn't even look up, just stared at the deviled eggs I was setting out like they were about to answer for her. Someone in the house. I'd been up since 5, cooked half the menu, vacuumed the hall, scrubbed the guest bathroom tile with vinegar and a toothbrush. But sure, just someone. Still, I didn't say a word. That's what people like me do. We stay quiet, we keep working, we make sure the plates are full and the silverware's straight, and we swallow every insult like it's dessert. But then I made the mistake of glancing at the party program. Printed in gold cursive on cheap cardstock. Host, Zinnia Marshall. Below that, in a smaller gray font that looked like it had been added last minute. Volunteer support, Ella. Friend of family. Friend of family. I was her sister, his daughter. The one who used to line her toy dinosaurs up in color order. The one who bought groceries last week when Dad's card declined. Friend. The belt around my chest tightened again. I tried to push through. The tray of roast beef was next. Heavy, hot, and already starting to slip as I lifted it. I had to get it out there, had to keep the illusion alive. But halfway across the kitchen, my vision dipped. My knees buckled just enough to send the platter tipping forward, and I felt it. The sharp jab under my ribs that made my breath catch. I steadied myself against the pantry door and called out, "Dad, I need to sit down. My chest. It hurts. I can't." The room didn't go silent right away. That's the myth we tell ourselves about dramatic moments. No, it stuttered. A few clinks of glass, then a lull in conversation, just long enough for every head to turn my direction, eyes narrowing in curiosity or annoyance. Silas, reclined in his corner chair with a whiskey glass balanced on his thigh, didn't even turn his head before he said it. "Shut up!" The 2 words snapped across the room like a whip. "There's always something with you," he added, voice louder now, just in case someone hadn't heard. I think someone near the door actually clapped, mistaking the moment for a joke. Another laughed nervously. And then, Zinnia. She tilted her head, widened her smile, and let out a laugh that bounced off the chandelier and settled into my skin like a bruise. I stood there, not because I didn't know what to do, but because I knew exactly what would happen if I did anything else. If I cried, they'd call me dramatic. If I left, I'd be selfish. If I argued, I'd be ruining Grandma's night. So I did nothing. Except breathe shallow, painful, humiliated breaths. I don't remember walking back to the kitchen, but I must have because the next thing I felt was the dish towel in my hands again, wet, balled up, and useless. My reflection caught in the microwave door. Pale, hollow-eyed, someone else. I leaned over the counter, waiting for the sting in my side to settle. That wasn't the first time he yelled like that, wasn't even the 10th. It was just the first time I didn't feel like the problem, because for once, I heard it the way they did. Not as a father managing a daughter, but as a man silencing someone who made him uncomfortable. My pain made him look bad. My voice made him vulnerable. I stared at the pile of napkins I hadn't folded yet. Outside, someone laughed too loud. Zinnia's voice again, sweet as syrup, but sharp underneath. "We all have that one sibling who needs the spotlight," she said to someone. I clenched my jaw. Not this time. I picked up the towel, wiped my hands slow and deliberate. I looked out at the guests, smiling, oblivious, sipping their drinks, and admiring the table I set. Then I turned toward the hallway, my steps calm, silent. No one noticed me leave. They wouldn't notice until I didn't show up to clean the mess. I wasn't crying this time. I was calculating. I didn't wait to see who noticed I was gone. By the time I reached the kitchen, the laughter had already resumed. That same hollow noise that echoed like wind through an empty barn. The kind of sound people make when they'd rather not acknowledge anything uncomfortable. I leaned against the counter, palms pressed flat to the cool laminate surface, forcing myself to breathe. Deep, even. 1, 2. The pain in my chest had dulled into a steady throb, like my ribs had taken up humming. It wasn't sharp anymore. It was just there, reminding me with every inhale that I didn't belong in this house as anything more than a pair of working hands. Behind me, the door creaked open. I didn't turn. I knew that voice before it even said anything. "Don't take it personally. That's just how your dad is." I glanced over my shoulder. One of Zinnia's friends, I think her name was Cassie or Casey or something equally forgettable, stood there holding a half-full wineglass and looking at me like she'd just offered a compliment. I murmured, turning back to the counter. Because what was I supposed to say? Thanks for justifying my public humiliation? She stood there for a moment, awkward, and then disappeared the same way she came. Quietly, casually, without any real intention of helping. I needed to sit. But instead, I rinsed my hands, dried them on a towel that smelled like lemon pledge, and stared blankly at the far wall until my heart slowed down. That's when my phone buzzed. One buzz, pause, another. Then 3 in a row. I pulled it from my pocket, expecting a text from Velda. She had promised to call after the party, but it wasn't her. It was from an old friend from college. We hadn't spoken in years. "Is that you in Zinnia's Insta story?" My stomach dropped. I opened Instagram. The app took its time loading, like it knew exactly what kind of mess it was about to deliver. There it was, Zinnia's story, already halfway through its 24-hour shelf life. It started with a boomerang of her clinking glasses with some neighbor, then a clip of the buffet table, then me. Wobbling under the weight of the roast beef tray, face pale, knees buckling just slightly before I braced myself against the pantry door. It was 6 seconds, maybe 7. Edited with a loud, over-the-top violin swell and a caption that read, "Every family's got a drama queen. Ours just serves the beef too." And the kicker? A laughing emoji at the end, like my pain was a punchline. The floor felt like it shifted under me. My face flushed, but not from embarrassment. It was rage, hot, focused rage. I didn't throw the phone, though God knows I wanted to. I didn't scream or storm back into the dining room. Instead, I watched it again, and again, until the sound of Zinnia's carefully curated laughter in the background made my teeth clench so hard my jaw ached. I took a breath. Then I saved the video. Upstairs felt like the only safe place. I slipped past the living room unnoticed, letting the hum of conversation mask my exit. The stairs creaked under my weight, same as they always had, each one familiar in the way old wounds are. In the guest bedroom, I shut the door and sank to the floor, back against the frame. The quiet was almost too loud. I scrolled past Zinnia's story, past all the hearts and laughing reactions, and opened the video I'd made. The one I'd spent 3 nights editing. The one I had emailed to her a week ago with the subject line, Mom's Tribute for Grandma's Party. It was perfect. The lighting, the timing, the music. Mom's voice over the photo montage, soft, loving, pulled from one of her old voicemails to me. You always try so hard, baby. Never let them make you feel small. I played it. Start to finish. 7 minutes of truth. And then I cried. Not because they forgot to play it, but because I knew they didn't forget at all. I'd asked Zinnia about it earlier, right after the main course. She'd brushed it off with a smile. Oh, shoot! I think the file was corrupted. I didn't check it beforehand. She had said it with that same tone she used when she forgot my birthday, or when she claimed she accidentally threw away Mom's old recipe book. But I had the email confirmation, I had the video backed up on my phone, and now I had motive. This wasn't just neglect, this was erasure. She didn't want Mom's voice in that room unless it came through her mouth. She didn't want anything associated with me to hold meaning, even if it was a tribute to the woman who raised us both. And what made it worse, nobody else cared. Nobody even asked where it went. I opened a message window and typed Velda's name. Then I stopped. No words felt right. No phrasing could capture what I wanted her to understand. So instead, I attached the video file, clicked the little blue arrow, and sent it without a caption. Let the video speak. Let Mom speak. The screen went dark after that. I sat there, knees to my chest, listening to the muffled sounds of celebration drifting through the floorboards. Laughter, glasses clinking. The kind of noise that used to mean home. Now it just meant I wasn't needed. But I wasn't leaving quietly this time. I opened my notes app and wrote 2 words. They erased. Then I wrote another. I remember. The message sent. The room still. The echo of the party below had finally faded, replaced by the faint tick of the ceiling fan and the soft hum of my phone charging beside the lamp. Morning arrived without my permission. I hadn't slept, just drifted in and out of memory, staring at the corners of the ceiling like they might open and give me a different ending. But I knew better. Morning didn't bring relief. It brought remembering. And in this house, remembering was the most dangerous thing of all. I swung my legs off the guest bed and sat upright slowly. My muscles were sore from standing, lifting, holding tension, but the real ache, the one deep in my chest, was quieter now. Not gone, just worn into a manageable dullness. Downstairs, the house was quiet. No clinking dishes, no fake laughter, just the occasional creak of the wooden floorboards settling. Zinnia and Dad must have still been asleep, or pretending to be. I didn't want breakfast. I didn't want coffee. I wanted silence. But silence has a funny way of turning into something else when you've got too many memories knocking around. So I sat on the edge of the bed and let them in. I remembered being 12 years old. The lawn was overgrown after a week of rain, and I had a fever that made my skin feel like it was on inside out. I told Dad I felt too weak to mow. He didn't even look up from the sports section, just said, "You'll sweat it out. Put on a hat." I mowed the whole thing with a towel wrapped around my head like a bandage. Passed out behind the garage when I finished. No one came looking. Then I was 9. Took a hard fall off my bike, blood dripping down my shin like a slow faucet. I limped home. Zinnia took one look and said, "Drama." Dad didn't say anything at all, just pointed at the paper towels under the sink. And prom. I'd saved all spring for that navy blue dress. Zinnia insisted we take sister photos beforehand, said she wanted to post them together. But the day of the event, she told me the lighting made me look washed out and that she'd take solo shots instead. I never saw the pictures posted. You're too much. You're not enough. 2 sides of the same message, handed to me over and over again like a worn-out family recipe. A soft knock broke the silence. Just one. Gentle, almost hesitant. I opened the door expecting space, not a person. But there she was. Velda stood there in yesterday's cardigan, holding something small in her hand, square, aged paper folded carefully. "I found something," she said. In your mother's sewing box. I think she meant it for you. I didn't say anything. I didn't trust my voice. She placed the paper in my palm. It was yellowed slightly at the edges, the way old memories get when they've been sitting too long. I unfolded it with both hands, my fingers trembling, not from fear, but from the weight of expectation. It wasn't long, just a letter, handwritten. Mom's familiar loops and curves, still strong even in her final months. The first line made my throat tighten. They may not see you, but I do. The second, underlined twice. Don't let their blindness become your truth. I closed my eyes, clutched the paper like it could steady my spine. Velda didn't stay long. She just nodded and left me to it, closing the door without a word. She'd always known when I needed silence. I laid the letter on the dresser beside my phone. The tribute file still sat untouched, glowing faintly like it was waiting for me to do something with it. I didn't cry. Not this time. Instead, I reached into the drawer and pulled out my journal, the one I'd stopped writing in the day Mom died. The pen rolled easily into my hand like it had been waiting, too. I wrote one line, "If they refuse to see me, I'll make sure the world does." Then I flipped open my laptop and created a new folder on the desktop. Evidence. Inside, it was blank, empty like the space I'd been assigned in this family. But not for long. I started small. Screenshots of the party brochure, where my name was listed as friend of family. Photos of the buffet I'd cooked alone. The text message from my college friend about Zinnia's Instagram post. A digital copy of the tribute video. Mom's voice, crystal clear. Then I paused, opened the video again, listened. You always try so hard, baby. I let the words fill the room. Never let them make you feel small. The screen went black when it ended. I let it. No replay this time. Instead, I stood, stretched. The ache in my ribs hadn't vanished, but it felt like it belonged to someone else now. A version of me who didn't fight back. A woman who swallowed hurt and served ham. I wasn't her anymore. Downstairs, I could hear the faint rattle of dishes being moved. Maybe someone was pretending to clean. Maybe Dad had finally realized guests don't scrub their own messes. I didn't care. I slipped the folded letter into my wallet, grabbed my phone, and stepped into the hallway with a spine a little straighter than the night before. It took me a full hour after titling the folder to actually open it again. Just seeing the word evidence typed on my laptop made something twist in my stomach. Not fear exactly, but the old familiar dread that comes from daring to tell the truth in a house built on denial. I sat in Velda's living room the next day, laptop on my knees, staring at the blinking cursor. She was in the kitchen making tea, the sound of the kettle hissing just behind her half-shut door. A breeze pushed in through the open window, carrying the scent of grass clippings and something faintly sweet, like cinnamon toast. You heard from him yet? She called out, her voice calm as ever. No, I replied, fingers hovering over the keys. But I think I need to. She didn't say anything right away. Then quietly, he noticed, Artis. I could see it in his face at the party. Dr. Ambrose isn't the type to ignore what doesn't fit into a perfect picture. I nodded, more to myself than to her. I'd been rehearsing what to say all morning. Still, when I picked up the phone, my thumb trembled over the call button. It wasn't that I was afraid of Dr. Ambrose. He'd always been kind, polite in that small-town, former scoutmaster way. But I'd been taught, over and over again, that drawing attention to my pain made me look unstable. Weak, like I was reaching for sympathy instead of standing in truth. I pressed call before I could talk myself out of it. His voice answered on the second ring. Dr. Ambrose. Hi, this is Artis Marshall. I hated how small my voice sounded. I'm not sure if you remember, but I do, he said gently. You passed out in your father's kitchen. I remember exactly. There was no hesitation, no pause to figure out how much he wanted to admit. Just fact. I was wondering if I could come in, I said, just to talk, not about a diagnosis or anything formal. He didn't even blink. Come by at 2. I'll be here. When I hung up, I looked over at Velda. She poured my tea without a word and handed it to me. Then she nodded once, like we both knew this was bigger than just a visit. By 1:30, I was parked across the street from his small office. The building sat behind the pharmacy, a plain brown structure with one of those push-bell front doors that chimed as you walked in. Inside, it smelled faintly of eucalyptus and printer paper. He didn't make me wait. I stepped into the front room, and before I could even greet the receptionist, he opened the side door himself. "Artis?" he said with a warmth that didn't feel forced. I followed him into a room that looked more like a counselor's office than a medical one. No paper-covered exam tables, just a couch, 2 chairs, and a bookshelf filled with books on stress management and pain disorders. He motioned for me to sit. I did. "I won't make this awkward," he began, sitting opposite me. "You're not the first person to hesitate about reaching out, but you don't need to prove anything to me." I swallowed. My fingers fidgeted in my lap. At the party, when I asked my dad to stop and he barked at me, "Did you see what happened right after? You went pale," he said. "Then you hunched slightly, like your ribs hurt. Your breathing shifted, shorter, shallower." He folded his hands together. "That's not something you fake, Artis. I've seen a lot of theatrics in my years. That wasn't one of them." The words hit me harder than I expected. Someone finally believed me, and not out of pity, not because they loved me or owed me, but because the truth had finally been visible to someone else. He continued, "You need to see someone about those ribs." "I'd suggest imaging." "I will," I said, and I meant it. For once, I didn't want to downplay what hurt. As we stood to leave, he paused. "I'm happy to write a statement if you ever need one," he said, "about what I observed. I think it's important people know what denial can look like from the outside." I walked out of the office feeling 10 pounds lighter. Not healed, not whole, but no longer invisible. As I stepped outside into the late afternoon sunlight, a voice called out from across the sidewalk. "Artis? That you?" I turned to see an older woman standing near a cart of potted flowers, cardigan sleeves rolled to her elbows. She was peering over her glasses with a look that held decades of knowing. "Mrs. Kellen?" I asked. She smiled, gentle but firm. "Honey, I just have to say something. I saw you once years ago. It was January. Snow halfway up the driveway. You were outside with a shovel and no gloves. You had the look of fever in your face, but you were out there working like it was the 4th of July. She shook her head. I remember thinking, why isn't anyone helping that girl? But I figured, maybe that's just how things are in your house. But I never forgot. Not once. I didn't know what to say. Her words hung in the air like a blanket, soft, warm, and a little heavy. "Thank you," I finally whispered. She nodded and went back to adjusting a tulip. I got in my car and drove back to Velda's. She was waiting on the porch with a notebook in her lap and her glasses perched low on her nose like she meant business. "Well?" she asked. I told her everything. She didn't interrupt, just kept jotting things down. When I finished, she closed the notebook and said, "If you want to fight, we fight smart. No yelling, just facts." She handed me a pen. We started making a list, names, dates, screenshots, moments I thought I'd buried that now had names and timestamps. "I remember your father telling you it builds character to work through illness," Velda muttered as she wrote. "That's not character, that's cruelty with good marketing." I laughed. The sound surprised both of us. By evening, the sun had dipped below the neighbor's fence. The porch light flickered on, automatic but late. We'd been working for hours and hadn't noticed the time. Inside, I sat down at the kitchen table and opened my laptop again. A new document, blank. I titled it, "My Case." The cursor blinked at me. This time, I didn't hesitate. The cursor blinked once more before I finally closed the laptop. I didn't need to write another word right then. I needed to walk into that house with a different posture than the one I'd carried my whole life. Not hunched, not shrinking, no more apologizing for being visible. Late that morning, Velda dropped me off in front of the house and didn't say a word as I grabbed my tote. She didn't need to. She knew this walk, this crossing from one threshold into another, wasn't about luggage. It was about reclaiming something I'd been told I had no right to hold. The front door creaked as I opened it, same as it always did, but today it didn't startle me. The smell of lemon cleaner hit me, sharp and familiar. Silence wrapped around the space like plastic, tidy, fake, suffocating. Dad was at the kitchen table, the newspaper opened wide like a curtain he could hide behind. I stepped in fully and let the door shut behind me. He didn't look up. On the fridge, taped with crooked magnets, was the weekly task list, Zinnia's handwriting all over it. Mow the back, grocery run, wipe baseboards, check pantry expiration dates. My name was at the top. I walked to the counter and placed my bag down with intention. I didn't slam it, I didn't sigh. I simply made noise, a declaration in this house where silence was survival. Dad finally spoke without lifting his eyes from the paper. "So you're back." "Just passing through," I said evenly, opening the fridge as if this were just any Tuesday. "Thought you'd be too busy chasing attention to stop by." I let the fridge door shut, turned to him. "If you're trying to bait me into an argument, I'm not playing." He chuckled dryly. "After what you pulled at the party, don't expect a penny from this house when I'm gone." That stopped me, just for a moment. I could have let it pass, could have pretended it didn't touch a nerve, but something in me refused to shrink back this time. "I'm not here for your money," I said calmly. "I'm here to make sure you never do that to me again." He looked up then, the corner of his mouth curling like he wasn't sure if I was joking. I wasn't. He didn't say another word. I poured myself a glass of water and drank it slow. The kitchen clock ticked. Somewhere down the hall, a floorboard creaked. By the afternoon, I was outside, raking the edge of the lawn. Not because they told me to, but because I needed the motion, the rhythm. Something that belonged to me. That's when Zinnia pulled up in her usual SUV, music still playing even after the engine turned off. She stepped out with sunglasses too big for her face and a shopping bag from the home goods store in one hand. "Hey!" she called, all bright cheer. "Got a favor?" I didn't respond right away. She walked over like we were sisters in a sitcom, like the last week hadn't happened at all. "I'm hosting a little gathering tonight, just some people from work. You know, nothing huge, backyard thing." She twirled her keys. "Could really use your help." I leaned on the rake. "Define help." "You know, grill a few things, set up the fire pit, tidy the patio." "You're so good with that stuff." She said it like I was the hired hand, like I should be flattered to be included. "You planning to introduce me as your sister this time?" I asked. "Or just someone in the house?" She blinked. "Oh, come on, Artis, don't be sensitive. You didn't correct anyone when they called me staff last weekend. You let them assume I was the help. You even printed it." She laughed like it was nothing. "That was just a mix-up." "You know how fast those brochures get thrown together?" "No," I said, dropping the rake and wiping my hands. "I know exactly how long they take because I made them for 3 years straight when Mom was alive." Her expression changed, just slightly, just enough for me to see the crack in the performance. That evening, I helped with the backyard setup, but only on my terms. I lit the tiki torches and arranged the patio chairs, but I didn't touch a single tray of food. When guests arrived, Zinnia floated among them like she always did, dropping curated bits of her life like breadcrumbs for admiration. Eventually, she pulled me over to introduce me to a guest in a navy blazer and over-gelled hair. "This is Artis," she said, smiling wide. "She's always been our family's rock. Always helps." I met the man's hand with a steady grip and replied without missing a beat. "Funny, she never says that when no one's watching." He laughed, awkward, confused, and turned his attention elsewhere. Zinnia's smile twitched, but she said nothing. Later that night, after the guests left, I sat on the edge of my bed upstairs, opened my laptop again, and added a new folder to my case. Screenshots, time-stamped text messages, a backup of the party brochure, and then something else, a new memo. I opened the voice recorder app on my phone, scrolled to earlier that afternoon, hit play. Zinnia's voice came through clearly. "You know, grill a few things, set up the fire pit, tidy the patio. You're so good with that stuff." I hit save, renamed the file. Helper request 2225 Artis WAVE. That night, I didn't cry, I didn't spiral, I documented, because next time she used me, it would be the last. The recording saved without a hiccup. I named it plainly, no clever titles, no dramatics, just what it was. Zinnia Request Audio 041 Teen. I backed it up to my external drive and emailed a copy to myself. No more second guessing. The next morning, a voicemail lit up my screen. I hadn't heard the buzz, must have stepped away from the phone while doing laundry. But the number was unmistakable. Dad's cell. I played it once, leaning against the wall in Velda's hallway, socked feet still damp from the back porch. His voice filled the space, dry, brittle, and sharp. You need to cut this out. You're tearing this family apart. I don't know what you think you're doing with all this noise, but let me tell you right now, nobody's going to believe your little sob story. You always were dramatic. Click. Then another file started playing automatically. This one, Zinnia. Her tone was lighter, but only because cruelty came easier to her. She's always needed an audience, she said, half laughing. Guess she found one. Hope she enjoys the spotlight while it lasts. I didn't move. I didn't rewind. I just sent both files to Velda. By noon, we were sitting at her kitchen table, blinds drawn halfway to block the sun. She'd made sandwiches, egg salad, too much mustard, but that was her version of comfort food. She listened to both recordings on her laptop without flinching, then pushed her glasses up and said, "That alone could be a headline." I looked at her. You really think so? I know so. This isn't just mean-spirited. This is targeted. It's coercive. She opened a leather-bound planner and jotted a name down. Karen Delaney, she said. Paralegal, retired last year, but sharp as ever, owes me a favor. The next 2 days blurred into a rhythm of quiet planning. I kept busy, scanning more evidence, organizing files, checking dates and times. Velda met with Karen and came back with a list of what could count as admissible documentation if things went further than we expected. And maybe they would. On the third afternoon, the bell above the front door chimed. I was in the living room sorting paper copies of the party brochure when Velda's voice carried from the entryway. She's in here, she said, not sounding surprised. Zinnia stepped into the room, crisp in a white blouse, designer bag dangling from her elbow like a badge of honor. I figured it was time we talked, she said, too cheerfully. Velda didn't offer her tea. I stood slowly. Not to match her posture, but because I wasn't rushing for anyone anymore. Zinnia walked a circle around the room like she was inspecting a hotel suite. Look, I know things have escalated, she said, but this whole crusade of yours is really tearing us up, Artis. I waited. She kept going. We all have our issues. Nobody's perfect. You think I haven't had things to deal with? But you're turning every little misstep into a war crime. It's exhausting. Her eyes glistened, but not from tears. This victim routine, Velda coughed, loud. It's not helping you, sis. People are starting to think you're unstable. There it was, the line. I tilted my head. That's what you're going with? I'm unstable? You twist things, she said, adjusting her bag strap. We all help. We all carry weight. But you make it sound like you were some kind of servant. Velda didn't move. Her phone sat face down beside her cup. I glanced at it, then back at Zinnia. I have one question, I said. That video tribute to Mom, the one I emailed you. Did you delete it? She smiled, just for a second. It wasn't the right tone for the party. I nodded once. That's all I needed. She shifted her weight, eyes narrowing. What's that supposed to mean? Velda stood. It means this conversation is over, she said. Zinnia let out a short breath, the kind people make when they're used to winning arguments with tone alone. I came here to make peace, she muttered. No, I said. You came here to rewrite the past. As she turned and left, Velda picked up her phone and showed me the screen. Recording. 8 minutes. I smiled, not in triumph, just relief. We had it all. That night, I lay in Velda's guest room with the door open. The window let in a breeze that smelled faintly of rain and something sweeter, maybe from the magnolia tree in the yard. I opened the recordings again, not to torture myself, but to re-listen with clarity. Dad's tone, Zinnia's spin, the soft disdain in their voices. This was never about a bad day. This was about decades of careful erasure. I added the new audio file to a different folder. Not just family, I labeled it. Underneath that, evidence. It wasn't a scrapbook. It was protection. I leaned back in bed, pulled my laptop onto my knees, and stared at the home screen. Then I opened my contacts. One number stood out, a local reporter I'd known from college. We weren't close, but she'd always had a sharp eye for stories no one wanted to tell. I hovered over the call button for a long moment. Then I tapped it. The line rang once, twice, and then. The call connected after the third ring. Her voice came through like it always did, measured, calm, no fake cheer, just a woman who'd spent years separating noise from truth. Artis? Hi, Lindsay. I know it's been a long time. Not long enough to forget your voice, she said. What's going on? I took a breath. Not the shallow kind I'd been doing to survive the house, but one from deep down, the kind that fills you with a sense that something is finally shifting. I have something, I said, and I think it matters. She didn't ask what. She just said, meet me at the community center tomorrow morning, 9 sharp. And so I did. Lindsay walked into the center with her notepad tucked under one arm and an old-school voice recorder in her jacket pocket. She didn't bring a camera crew, didn't post a teaser online. She came as a listener, not a spectacle. We sat at the far corner table, behind the faded mural of Billings' early settlers and a chipped vending machine that hadn't worked since I was in high school. I told her everything. The voice memos, the doctored family brochure, the accidental video deletions, the will. At one point, I paused and said, this isn't just about me being left out. It's about erasure, over years, layer by layer. And they think I won't say anything because we share blood. Lindsay didn't blink. She just nodded and asked, do you have proof? I pulled out a USB and placed it on the table. She picked it up like it was loaded. 3 days later, the piece went live, local news, front page, audio clips embedded, screenshots included. My words in quotes, plain and unsensational. I never wanted to burn the family down. I just wanted to stop being the only one choking on the smoke. The story spread faster than I expected. Velda printed a hard copy and stuck it on her fridge. The comment section online was a mix of sympathy, suspicion, and the usual, family drama shouldn't be aired in public. But buried among them were a few that said, I know that voice. I was raised by one just like it. And, she's not bitter, she's brave. Then came the counterattack. Silas posted a letter in the local bulletin board at the grocery store, a laminated printout with his name typed in bold at the bottom. My daughter is mentally unwell. It brings me no joy to say this, but the community deserves to know. Please do not feed into her delusions. It was signed, with sadness, Silas Marshall. Then Zinnia appeared in a live stream. She sat on a couch draped in throw blankets, eyes rimmed with just enough eyeliner smudge to look emotional. We've always supported Artis, she said, voice trembling. All we've done is love her. And now she's trying to destroy us. In the live chat, someone posted, didn't she post a clip mocking her at the party? It started getting likes. Lots of them. The clip resurfaced, 6 seconds of me stumbling with a tray, edited to circus music, captioned, every family has a drama queen. It went viral. Zinnia turned off comments the next day. The silence from their side after that was loud, but it didn't stop me from digging deeper. Velda came over with an old jewelry box she'd found while cleaning out the garage. It was cedar, with brass hinges, and it smelled like the top drawer of my mother's dresser. Inside was a felt-lined compartment with no jewelry, just an empty slot where a plaque once sat. She looked at me, gently placing a tarnished brass plate in my palm. For Artis. It had been glued to the underside. Someone had pried it off. I didn't need to ask who replaced it. Velda whispered, your mother showed me this box the week before she passed. She told me it was yours. I nodded. That pain, the kind that didn't stab but just sat there, heavy, settled again in my chest. Not new, just finally named. We didn't say much after that. We didn't need to. The next morning, Velda asked if I could help her move some old files in her office. We pried open an old safe in her closet, one that hadn't been touched in years. Tucked inside an envelope marked Personal, Ione Marshall, was the original will. Signed, notarized, split 50-50. Velda held it up like it was the Constitution. I sat down slowly on the edge of her couch. "She left it to both of us," I whispered. Velda nodded. "But the one that got filed only had Zinnia's name." 2 weeks after Mom's funeral, Silas had walked it into the courthouse and filed a revised copy. No signatures, just notarized on his word. We didn't cry. We made copies. I ironed my dress shirt the next morning, the one I hadn't worn in years, the one Mom bought me for my first job interview. Then I took that envelope and walked into the town hall. The receptionist behind the desk looked up and started to smile. Then she saw the envelope. "Hi, Artis," she said cautiously. "I need to speak with someone about a legal discrepancy," I replied. She glanced at the gold letters printed on the front of the envelope. Original Will, Ione Marshall. And the whole room got quiet. I wasn't loud. I wasn't crying. I was undeniable. The front door of the town hall clicked shut behind me as I stepped into the echo of polished floors and faint fluorescent buzz. My heels, quiet but sure, made soft contact with the tile. Each step paced deliberately. No rush, no retreat. Velda was already inside, seated near the front row. She gave me a nod when I entered, not one of encouragement, but acknowledgement. I was no longer the invisible one. The room wasn't packed, but it didn't need to be. A few reporters, the city clerk, 2 council members, and, of course, Silas and Zinnia. They sat on the left, dressed like it was Sunday morning service, eyes already narrowed, backs too straight. Their stillness said more than their faces ever would. I approached the table at the center, unzipped my folder, and laid the envelope down. The gold-stamped label gleamed under the fluorescent lights. Original Will, Ione Marshall. A clerk stepped forward and opened it, removing the notarized document with latex gloves like it was evidence in a criminal trial. In some ways, it was. As the pages were reviewed, I cleared my throat, and the silence fell tighter. "This isn't just about an inheritance," I began, voice level. "This is about erasure, about how power rearranges truth. This was supposed to be shared. But after Mom died, the document you all saw was not this one. That version left me out entirely." No one interrupted. "Not yet." I continued. "I have here the original will, notarized before her passing, naming both Zinnia and myself as equal beneficiaries. I also have audio recordings from the past 2 weeks, evidence of coercion, emotional manipulation, and outright threats." I gestured toward the projector where Lindsay, the reporter, had set up a small speaker. The voice played first, Silas, gruff and cutting. "You need to cut this out. You're tearing this family apart." Then Zinnia, syrupy, disdainful. "She's always needed an audience." The room didn't gasp. This wasn't a soap opera. This was real. That's what made the silence sharper. I showed them the jewelry box next, a simple cedar piece. No jewels, no flair, just a plaque, now reattached, engraved, "For Artis." "I found this in the garage." The plaque had been removed. Zinnia replaced it with one bearing her name. My mother showed this to Velda the week before she died. Velda stood and confirmed it with a simple, steady statement, then the final piece. Dr. Ambrose submitted a written statement confirming I was experiencing respiratory distress during the party, that I was not faking, that the reaction from my family was negligent at best, hostile at worst. Councilman Reed leaned forward, brow furrowed. "This isn't a family dispute anymore," he said. "It's a pattern." That's when the shift happened. From the corner of the room, a woman raised her hand. Ellen Simmons, former secretary at my father's construction firm. "He fired me," she said, voice shaking slightly, "because I asked for a day off after a miscarriage, said we weren't running a charity." A man behind her added, "He let me go after I sprained my ankle on the job. No comp, no paperwork." More voices followed. Not screams, just truth. One by one, they stood, each memory a thread in the unraveling of the martial facade. Zinnia's lips parted as if to protest, but no sound came. Her hand twitched, probably hunting for her phone. Damage control instinct. But this wasn't online. This was real. Later that afternoon, her PR agency issued a statement. Zinnia Marshall's public role would be indefinitely suspended pending internal review. And the viral backlash did the rest. Someone created a side-by-side video, her mocking my collapse at the party alongside a clip from her live stream where she tearfully claimed to be my biggest supporter. It spread fast. Her followers dropped. Comments flooded with side eyes and snake emojis. People unfollowed not because I said anything, but because she finally got caught. As for Silas, a lawyer representing several former employees filed a class action complaint the same week. Workplace abuse. Unsafe conditions. One whistleblower said Silas made them work during a snowstorm with no heater in the truck. When the state opened an investigation into the altered will, he didn't speak, didn't deny it, just sat in his chair during the hearing, jaw tight, arms crossed. That silence, after all those years of barking orders and dismissing my pain, was the loudest admission he ever made. I didn't smile when the verdict came. Didn't cry either. When the town clerk wrapped the hearing, people filtered out slowly. Some nodded toward me, a few smiled gently. One woman squeezed my hand in passing. "You gave the rest of us permission," she whispered. I stepped outside into the sunlight, blinking against the late afternoon glare. The air smelled faintly of warm pavement and honeysuckle. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt like I could finally breathe. The sunlight clung to my shoulders like a blanket I hadn't asked for, but needed anyway. I stood for a long moment on the steps outside the town hall, the last of the news crews packing up behind me, their vans rumbling down the street toward the next story. My fingers were still curled slightly from gripping the envelope, though it was now empty, the documents surrendered. I wasn't holding evidence anymore. I was holding breath. When I finally moved, it wasn't with triumph. It was just motion. Forward, steady. A month passed like that, not with applause or catharsis, but in slow, ordinary days. Some filled with phone calls and quiet meetings, others just laundry, tea, and the hum of Velda's radio playing old jazz standards in the background. I didn't sleep well that first week. Too many nights, I found myself staring at the ceiling, wondering when the crash would come. The inevitable backlash for finally saying out loud what had lived inside me for decades. But the backlash never came. Not really. Zinnia disappeared from social media. Her PR firm suspended her indefinitely, and her influencer partnerships pulled out without so much as a statement. The video, the one comparing her mocking me to her live stream tears, was still circulating quietly, no longer viral, but never forgotten. Silas put the house on the market. He hadn't returned a single call from local reporters, refused to comment on the investigation into the altered will, didn't contest anything, didn't apologize either, just vanished. That kind of silence used to scare me. Now, it just confirmed what I'd always known. He was never going to say the words I needed, but I no longer needed them. One Sunday morning, I woke up to the smell of Velda's coffee and toast. She was humming in the kitchen, something soft, maybe gospel, maybe old country. I never could tell with her. The air was cool, the windows cracked just enough to let the breeze in. For the first time in weeks, my chest didn't feel like it was carrying someone else's shame. I sat at the table in my robe, nursing my mug of Earl Grey, and scrolled through my phone. Zinnia's accounts were still deactivated. No posts, no likes, just silence. And I didn't feel satisfaction, just release. I placed the phone down and stared out the window. That afternoon, I opened the doors to the truth room. It had once been a storage unit beside the church, a squat, square building with bad lighting and worse insulation. But we'd transformed it. Velda and I. New paint, clean walls, donated furniture, and a small bookshelf stacked with resources about trauma, grief, and surviving the people who were supposed to love you. The sign out front wasn't flashy, just simple lettering on stained wood. The Truth Room. For anyone who was told they were too much, too weak, or too loud to be heard. There was no ribbon-cutting ceremony, no camera crews, no grand speeches, just me, Velda, a few volunteers, and a pot of chili simmering in the back kitchen. The first visitor arrived just after 2. A middle-aged man, flannel shirt, calloused hands, eyes that couldn't quite look directly at me. He held a baseball cap in his hands and twisted it slowly as he spoke. "My daughter thinks I made it all up," he said. "The things I went through. Says I'm exaggerating." He looked up finally. "I just need someone to listen. Someone who won't call it whining." "You came to the right place," I told him. He stayed for an hour. Didn't cry, didn't vent. Just told stories, one after another, like he was exhaling parts of himself he didn't know were still stuck. When he left, he shook my hand and said, "I didn't think this kind of space existed." I nodded. It didn't. That's why we built it. In the weeks that followed, more people came. A retired teacher who'd been pushed out of her job for reporting misconduct, a college student whose mother called every anxiety attack a performance, a young man who hadn't spoken to his sister in 10 years after she rewrote their father's will to exclude him. Each of them carrying the same wound, different shape. I didn't fix anyone. I just listened. And in listening, I became something I never thought I could be. Solid. That night, back at Velda's, I sat in my room and pulled out my journal again. The same one that used to be filled with questions like, "What did I do wrong?" and "How do I stop making them angry?" Now, it held a different kind of ink. "I used to think strength was staying silent," I wrote. "Now I know it's staying standing." I didn't feel like a hero. I didn't feel healed. But I felt seen, and for someone like me, that was enough. Just before bed, I blew out the candle on my nightstand and checked my email one last time. There were 3 messages from people who'd read the news story and wanted to share their own. 3 more people looking for a place to begin. The next day, as I unlocked the door to the truth room, someone knocked just behind me. I turned. A teenage girl stood there, oversized hoodie, backpack hanging from one shoulder, notebook hugged to her chest. She looked up at me, eyes wary but determined. "I think," she said, voice barely above a whisper, "I think this is where I start." I held the door open wider. "Come on in." Sometimes, the loudest kind of strength is the one that never raises its voice. It just refuses to disappear. Artis's story reminds us that speaking up doesn't always look like shouting. Sometimes it's organizing the evidence, pressing record, and saying enough with your actions. What happens when the people who should have protected you become the ones you need protection from? Have you ever had to walk away from family just to reclaim your peace? If stories like this speak to something in you, don't forget to subscribe. There are more real, raw stories waiting to be told.